the Carrie Steele Pitts home. The founder, Carrie Steele Logan, was an emancipated slave who moved to Atlanta during Reconstruction while working as a maid at the Union Railroad station and encountered many abandoned children. Her compassionate heart and her experience as an orphan compelled her to care for them in her very own home. Carrie raised the money to build a larger space and founded what would become the oldest Black orphanage in the country, the Carrie Steele Pitts home. Locations have changed, but the commitment to children remains. Her epitaph at Oakland Cemetery reads, "The mother of orphans, she hath done what she could." I'm Atlanta City Council member Andrea Boone. The legacy lives.
The Atlanta City Council approves legislation amending the city's Code of Ordinances to clarify alcohol license requirements for reporting food and alcohol sales at annual renewal and update the mandatory penalties for due cause findings of violations. The legislation aims to address nuisance properties and activities that are considered threats to public health and safety and ensure that establishments licensed as restaurants are operating in accordance with license requirements. The Council says yes to legislation requiring a minimum of 33% of net revenue collected for school zone speed camera enforcement remitted to the city be used towards surveillance cameras and license plate readers citywide, and that a minimum of 33% of fund allocations be used toward constructing or improving the city's public safety training facility. The ordinance is companion legislation to a resolution adopted during the Council's January 19th meeting to approve an agreement with Atlanta Public Schools for the school bus stop arm camera enforcement program and authorize the collection and sharing of fines resulting from offenses. The Council greenlights a resolution expressing support for the strategy of the CDC's public health approach to violence, which is characterized by its emphasis on prevention and its strong conviction that violent behavior and its consequences can be prevented over time, and to express support for the CDC's strategy to build and strengthen partnerships with the public and private sectors and at all levels of government to effectively address the multiple forms of violence. The Council approves a resolution requesting that the chief judges of the Superior Courts of Fulton and DeKalb counties share information with the City of Atlanta on how they've adapted court functions to resume operations with the challenges of COVID-19. For more recently approved legislation, please visit our website, citycouncil.atlantaga.gov. This has been your Atlanta City Council Legislative Minute.
Zernona Clayton is a civil rights activist who worked alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Clayton moved to Atlanta in 1965 after taking a job with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. She also traveled with Coretta Scott King during concert tours. She's the first Black person to have her own TV show, a corporate executive for Turner Broadcasting for nearly 3 decades. Clayton is the founder, president, and CEO of the Trumpet Awards Foundation, Incorporated, and creator and executive producer of the Trumpet Awards Show, which honors the accomplishments of Black Americans. The City of Atlanta honored Clayton with the dedication of a street and park plaza for a lifetime of contributions to humanity. I'm Atlanta City Council member Jennifer Ide. The legacy lives.
We know you and your patients have a lot of questions about the global outbreak of COVID-19 better known as the coronavirus.
Atlanta child psychiatrist Dr. Patrice Harris was the first Black woman elected to serve as president of the American Medical Association. I spoke with her about coronavirus and its impact on our nation. Are you encouraged by those additional vaccines that may come online, and then in particular the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which seems to have far less efficacy? How do you convince people who may say, okay, maybe it has a better outcome as relates to death, severe disease or death. However, its percentage is much lower than that of the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccination. How do you convince them when we're already running short and it may be the only one available for a time? What do you say to those folks who are first and foremost nervous about it, especially when you're hearing reports of people having problems after the second immunization or people dying from it? How do you keep that support in favor of the vaccination given these, although low incidents still occur, these incidences still occur?
So let me first start with me. I have received my first dose about 3 weeks ago, and I'm scheduled for my second dose this week. So I want to start there to make sure that folks know I do believe in leading by example. It's the message, but it's also the messenger, but it's also the actions of the messenger. So I have received, again, my first dose and will be receiving my second dose later this week. Yeah, so after the first dose, my arm was sore, and that was it. So my arm was sore about 48 hours, started to get better after that, and that was it. Now, we do know that people do have side effects more often after the second dose, where they're, have a little bit of fever, fatigue, don't feel well, like a flu. But I can tell you that when you weigh, a couple of days of not feeling well to saving one's life, for me, I look at dying from this disease versus a couple of days of not feeling well. For me, it's an easy decision.
Several variants of the virus have been discovered in the United Kingdom, South Africa, and Brazil. Both Pfizer and Moderna say a booster may be necessary, and they're working on one. Dr. Harris says she's encouraged by this.
That is good news, that we are identifying early, are able to identify the science and able to be able to develop additional booster shots as they may be needed. We all should be receiving a tetanus booster every 10 years, right? I don't know about you, but, I had a tetanus shot years ago. I think when I first came to Atlanta and came to train at Emory, and we had to make sure that our immunizations were up to date. That's not a foreign concept, that we sometimes need a booster shot.
As for the mental health of our children, many of whom have been somewhat isolated, and they're being educated remotely, Dr. Harris says there's no question that they're still dealing with stress, anxiety, and depression. She encourages parents to find ways to break from screen time and take learning outside. She also promotes the idea of families staying connected in a way that maximizes safety.
You could say, all right, I really want to see you, so we're going to not go anywhere for 10 days, and you're not going to go anywhere for 10 days, and then we're going to do stuff and then do that and then go back. So, I say be creative, but try to stay within the boundaries of what we know decreases risk.
The Atlanta Police Department saw major change in 1948 when it hired its first black police officers. Soon to come along in its ranks in 1950 was Claude Everett Mundy. While responding to a burglary on January 5, 1961, on Parkway Drive, Officer Mundy became the first black officer to be shot and killed in the line of duty. Officer Mundy was 39 years old and left behind a wife and 5 children. He was recently honored with a proclamation during the 60th commemoration of his death. His family was there celebrating his life and his undeniable bravery. I'm Atlanta City Council member Michael Julian Bond. The legacy lives.
All right, it looks like it's 1:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Finance Executive Committee. Today is Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. It's 1:30 p.m. I'm Jennifer I, the chair of the Finance Executive Committee. And on the line today, we have Councilmember Shook, Councilmember Westmoreland, Councilmember Dickens, Councilmember Archibald, and Councilmember Matzekite, and Councilmember Shepherd has put in a notice that she's unable to be with us today, and I believe that Council President Felicia Moore is on the line as well. So we constitute a quorum. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And Ms. Kempson-Wright, can you please read our remote meeting statement?
Yes. This Finance Executive Committee meeting is being conducted remotely as advertised and as in accordance with the official code of Georgia 50-14-1. The meeting will be...
You might be on mute.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I was on mute. This Finance Executive Committee meeting is being conducted remotely as advertised and as in accordance with the official code of Georgia 50-14-1. The meeting will be conducted in conformance with Robert's Rules of Order and the Rules of Council is authorized by the City Code. The public may access the meeting by the following conference bridge: toll-free access 877-579-6743, conference ID 831-599-1256, which was noted on the Friday, February 5th public meeting notice. The public may also view the meeting on Channel 26, citycouncilatlanta.gov, or the Council's YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter pages via ATO Council. All presentations are available on the Atlanta City Council Finance Executive Committee presentation page. The agenda was published and made available on Friday, February 5th via atlantacityg.iqm2.com. Public comment was accepted between the hours of 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. on yesterday, Tuesday, February 9th. All persons present on the remote council presentation conference bridge are requested to mute your phones and speakers. Additionally, speakers must be acknowledged by the presiding officer prior to speaking. Each council member is requested to open your Outlook email and minimize your screen. Amendments, substitutes, and informational documents have been distributed to committee members earlier, and we thank you all in advance for your cooperation.
Thank you so much. I do not believe we have any changes to our agenda today, so I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to adopt our agenda.
Second, sure.
All right, let's open the vote on the agenda.
Vote is open. We're actually going to need to take a voice vote, please, for the adoption of the agenda.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that was no opposition. Our agenda has been adopted. We need to adopt our minutes from our last meeting. I'll make a motion to do that.
Second.
All right, we'll take a voice vote on the minutes as well. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Our minutes have been adopted with no opposition. That brings us to our goals and objectives, which have been in our packet for a couple of cycles now. Let me pull mine up in front of me. I haven't seen any additions, but people may have sent some to Ms. Kempson. Right. I'm going to just run through them quickly, and then if anybody has any additions, I think we should go ahead and finalize these today with the thought we can always add to them throughout the year. But continue to follow up reviews of open audit recommendations for previous departmental audits to measure compliance, review the most recent employee evaluations provided by the Department of Human Resources, determine if any correlation exists between evaluations and employee compensation. I don't know what has been done on that in the past. We have a couple of property tax related ones. Have the Fulton County Office of the County Auditor, in conjunction with the CFO, present the Tax Assessor's Office review of commercial properties. That was Resolution 18R 4430, which requested an independent firm's review of the property tax digest for commercial properties. Support measures that improve the accuracy of commercial property evaluations. Complete the update of Atlanta's impact fee program. We're getting close to that. Cease undertaking new projects within substantially completed TADs. I think we've made progress on that one. Mr. Westmoreland can probably give us some update there. Support measures prohibiting non-City of Atlanta development agencies from issuing tax breaks, reducing City of Atlanta property tax revenue without its formal approval. There's a measure moving along that relates to that. Receive updates from the administration on the Gulch project. Work with the Department of Human Resources to review current Opeb, which is other post-employment benefits, conditions, and trends. I've heard from several council members an interest in tackling that issue. Review real estate property taxes and their impact on affordable housing, and review the pros and cons of the growth of legacy contracts. So that's what we have on the list for today. If anybody has anything that they want to take off of that or change that or add any new goals and objectives, hit your speaker button or send me a message right now. And otherwise, I will make a motion to adopt these with the thought that we can add to them throughout the year.
Second, Matt Kite.
All right, Ms. Kempson, right? Is our voting system working, or do we need to take a voice vote?
The voting system is working now.
Okay, then let's open the vote on adopting our goals and objectives.
And the vote is open.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm having some technical difficulties, so I'm a yes.
Okay. So Westmoreland, a yes. That looks like we have, the vote was favorable with 5 yeses, 0 noes, and 1 abstention from Mr. Shook. Mr. Shook, you just want to think about this some more? Or is there something that you don't like on our goals and objectives?
I'm not sure. It seems like it's kind of more, so I want to make sure I'm up to speed on it. So I'd like to read it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And I do think that there's some items on there that, often we wait and we discuss an issue once there's legislation in front of us, but I do think that there's some issues on there that, we could always take some time in a meeting to discuss and just get an update on. All right, this is going to move us on to our public comment today. We have 3 comments in about 6.5 minutes, so if I can ask the team to play the public comments.
Greetings to you committee members and staff, and special greetings to you citizens and voters of Atlanta who have tuned into these proceedings and who are taking note of the degree to which public comments made by citizens are being honored. Ben Howard, Senior Advocate, Public Policy Analyst. Neighborhood Planning Unit R allows no committee reports, especially no reports dealing with finance. Let's talk finance MPUR 9. Let's talk about the plan to amend the City of Atlanta Urban Redevelopment Plan, and particularly the 3 areas of significance that relate to the Council District 12 Neighborhood Blueprint Plan, the Oakland City Fort McPherson LCI, and the Reimagine Greenbrier Plan. Citizens and stakeholders at NPUR did not have a chance to talk about these on the recent NPUR agenda. But let's talk finance NPUR 9. Let's talk about the money being discussed to fight carjackings and other crimes used for cameras and license plate readers in other parts of our city, but not in ours. Let's talk finance NPUR 9. Let's talk about why NPUR allows no financial reports about Adams Park and the Adams Park Recreation Center, or why you will allow no financial reports about the Cascade Nature Reserve. Let's talk finance NPUR, and let's talk about the NPUR grant money that was given to the Outfit Quite project. Let's talk finances NPUR 9. Let's talk about the money that was given to Anthony Robinson to help protect people against the coronavirus, and why she has not publicly provided any finance report. Let's talk finance NPUR 9. Let's talk about the municipal upfit sales tax, and how citizens voted to pay taxes of 1% of what they spend, so the $4 billion Atlanta Watershed Management Program might one day be resolved. Let's talk finance in 2021 on behalf of citizens of NPUR. You, Anthony Robinson, Paulus Clare, Ricardo Jacobs, Albert White, Renette L. Scott, Allison Hathaway, Sherry Williams, and you NPUR 9 cohorts and supporters. Let's talk finance.
Hi, my name is Rita Dannenberg, and I am a women-owned small business. And I have been doing business in the city of Atlanta for almost 10 years, 11 years to be exact. And what I find about the city of Atlanta small business taxes and fines are ridiculous. I've been in the business for 10 years, and only last year I was late in filing my business license, and the fine is $500 because it flipped my mind, and it's like I was 2 months late. And $500 for a small business, and especially at this moment, I have wrote a lot of letters. I reached out to many, the mayor and the senators, but I have not got any response from anybody. And it's very, very sad that small business suffers because of these high fines and licenses. And that's all. I'm not sure if I'm at the right department to give my comment, but anyway, I will leave my comment. Thank you so much.
Hello, Finance Committee. This is Elizabeth Hollister. I'm calling on behalf of the Upper West Side Community Improvement District. Our CID board has adopted a resolution regarding the proposed Beltline Special Services District legislation currently held by this committee and CDHS. I've emailed a copy to each of the council members on this committee, and I wanted to call in today to just summarize it and note our requested amendments to the SSD legislation for the public record. Our CID is contained entirely within Sub-Area 8 of the Beltline. Many of the properties are in the existing Beltline tax allocation district set up in 2005 to fund the Beltline. And currently, 78% of the annual property tax revenues from the portion of the TAD in Sub-Area 8 go to the Beltline. The 2-mile segment of the Beltline TAD within the CID is responsible for 21% of the TAD increment collected this year. We are an economic engine for the Beltline. However, no Beltline trail segment or other Beltline infrastructure or even design engineering has been conducted within Sub-Area 8 since the TAD was created in 2005, despite the substantial financial contributions from this area to the TAD. The published schedules show that even with the SSD tax, Sub-Area 8 will be the last segment of the Beltline trails to be constructed, which exacerbates the disproportionate contribution to the Beltline by the commercial property owners in this sub-area. Without a guarantee of the benefit offered by a special services district, the SSD would impose an unreasonable burden on the commercial properties in our area. The board would be willing to support the creation of the Beltline SSD's 2-mile tax on commercial and multifamily properties to build the Beltline Trail if and only if the legislation is amended to ensure that the portion of the Special Services District tax collected within Sub-Area 8 is used solely to acquire property for and design and construct the Beltline Trail within Sub-Area 8. So our CID board also requests more accountability, regular audits by the city auditor of the SSD financials, and a much narrower definition of what the SSD funds can be spent on. All of these amendment requests are detailed in our board resolution that has been emailed. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you all consider these amendments.
All right, is that the completion of public comment?
Yes, that is all.
All right, we have 3 presentations today, so we're going to get started with the Department of Finance for their fiscal year 2020 CAFR. Then we'll hear from KPMG on the fiscal year 2020 audit results, and then we will get our Georgia General Assembly legislative update from our legislative affairs team. So if Ms. Carr, you are ready, I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me, council member? Hello?
Yes, I can.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay, perfect. Hi. We're going to start off with the FY20 audit results. I'll move to the first slide. On the first slide, we want to talk about the audit reports that we actually prepare in the Department of Finance. Currently, we prepare the comprehensive annual financial report, which is called the CAFR. We also have the CAFR for aviation, watershed. In addition to that, we have the pension plans, which includes general, police, and fire. Along with that, we have other reports such as MOST, E911, car rental, and single audit. Next slide, please. On this slide, we want to talk about the revenues that we generated. So currently, we have $2.6 billion in revenues. Of that, 30% belongs to aviation. And we know that with aviation, 79.7 million passengers traveled through Hartsville during FY 2020 compared to what we had in 19, which was 109 million. We do know that we had a drop in passengers, and this is really due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We also had solid waste revenues of 3% and watershed of 27%. Next slide, please. On this slide, we want to stay high level. We wanted to talk about the change in fund balance. So if we look at the first general fund, we started off with 194 million. We had a deficit of 8 million during the year. So currently we have 186 million for the general fund. And really that $8 million deficit is really due to a loss in revenues such as hotel motel and local option sales taxes. But we'll talk about that in the next few slides. We also have group insurance. I wanted to highlight group insurance. Currently, we have a deficit of 37 million, and this is really due to the rate structure. We are looking to, determine how we can better have a handle on how we can increase our rates across the board. Non-major government, included in non-major government are the TAD funds, bond funds, in addition to hotel motel. I'll move down to non-major enterprise. Non-major enterprise is mainly combined with solid waste, and we'll talk about solid waste and their deficit in the slides that we have before us. Next slide, please. On this slide, I want to stay high level regarding the revenue trends over the last 5 years. Property taxes, you can see that we had an increase from FY19 to FY20, and really this increase is due to the growth in new construction. For local option sales taxes, we had $116 million for FY19 compared to FY20, $110 million. And this is really due to the closure of restaurants and retails in response to COVID-19. We also had additional fines and forfeitures. You can see that there was a drop there. And that's really due to the fact that there was suspension of parking and enforcement and less traffic violation activities. And then if we move down to hotel motel, for FY19, we had $21.3 million. For FY20, we had $13.6 million. And again, this is really due to the pandemic. We had less conventions and less, individuals traveling to our city. So I just wanted to share that at a high level, the revenue trend that we've seen over the past 4 or 5 years. Next slide, please. On this slide, we want to talk about the expenditures. So with general government, that's pretty flat. But I wanted to highlight police. For FY19, we had expenditures of $197 million compared to $205 million. And this is really due to the pay increase for the police officers. For the Department of Fire, for FY19, we had expenditures of $94 million compared to $90.6 million for FY20. And this is really due to vacant positions and intergovernmental agreement that was paid previously from fire that's now being paid from non-departmental. We also have the Department of Corrections. For FY19, we had $27.9 million. Compared to FY20, we had $19.1 million. And this is really due to the decrease in expenditures due to the repurposing of the jails. With Department of Parks, we see a slight increase. We had $39.6 million for FY19 compared to $42.9 million for FY20. And this is really due to new buildings coming on board, such as Thomasville Recreation Center and the maintenance of additional parks. So at a high level, this is where we are as far as the expenditures. The next slide on page 7, I wanted to talk about was fund balance. So if we look at FY19, we started off in the general fund with $194 million, and we had a drop of $8 million. And again, this is due largely to the pandemic. We had a decrease in hotel motel revenues, local option sales taxes. We also had an increase in overtime, but we also had that offset by savings for vacant positions and savings that we had in non-departmental for our reserves. What we want to share with this slide, if you look at the second bar, unrestricted fund balance remains above the 20% of the budget, which is a requirement that we have in the charter to keep 15 to 20% on hand for fund balance. But one thing we did want to point out is, depending on FY 2021, fund balance may not be available to balance the budget and remain above that 15% minimum requirement. Next slide, please. On this slide, I want to talk about the deficit fund. So we talked a little bit about group insurance. For FY19, it was $21.6 million. For FY20, it's $29.8 million. And again, we've noticed that with group insurance that we need to look at the rates and determine how we can right size this fund. For solid waste, we had a deficit of $38.8 million in FY19. For FY20, we had a deficit of $35.3 million. You can see that solid waste deficit is going down. However, we know that over time, it'll take us some time to get out of the deficit positions with solid waste. The last slide I want to share is pension and Opeb. So if we look at the bottom of this slide for pension, I want to talk about the liabilities. So currently we have a liability of $1.1 billion. This is up from last year. Last year, it increased around $14 million. But the good news is, if you look at general employees, we're funded at 70%, firefighters 75%, and police officers 79%. And then if we look at the top of the slide, we have our ADC, which is all ADC means is the amount that we need to fund for benefits over time for our pension funds. For general employees, we have $48.2 million. For firefighters, $15.6 million, and police officers, $21.5 million. And on the right-hand side of the slide, I wanted to talk about the Opeb liability. So with the Opeb liability, it is up from last year around $42 million, and we can see that it's broken out by general government, airport, watershed, and non-major enterprise, which is mainly solid waste. So currently our liability for Opeb is $992 million. So I'll move on to the last slide, and I'll pause and answer any questions and comments that you may have.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Carr? But I don't see anybody with their hand raised right now, so you may continue on.
Okay. So now I'll pause for a second, and I'll turn it over to Karen Mitchell. She's a partner with KPMG, and she's going to share the audit findings and additional information regarding the audit. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we make sure that Ms. Mitchell can get on the on the line?
Yes, 1 second, please.
Councilmember, I just got an email from Karen Mitchell. She said that she can't see anything, but she can hear music online. So I don't know.
Okay. I think our team is working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, we're working on it just to confirm and ensuring that we allow her access to the line.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Great.
Oh, perfect.
Sorry about the technical
That's
issue.
okay. I could hear everything. This is Karen Mitchell. Thank you for inviting me today. As Ms. Carr stated, I am the audit partner that I serve on your account, and I'm joined today on the phone by Kathy Bauman. She served as the engagement partner on the Department of Aviation and Watershed Management. I'm going to go through our presentation. I'm not going to go through every page, but I wanted to highlight several things. On page 1 of our presentation, it's the slide that says executive summary. I just wanted to let the committee know that we did perform the audit this year remotely, and it was actually quite successful between us and our 4 joint venture partners, as well as all of the departments in the city. We did come on site to test the pension files. They were voluminous, and because of the confidential information that was in them, we did come on site for about a week. That was the only time we came on site at all during the audit. Everything else was performed remotely. In page 3, it just, again, talks about thinking ahead and coordinating the audits in the new COVID-19 environment. We will be taking some lessons learned from last year's audit, but all in all, we met with management quite a bit on Teams meetings and Zoom calls and just regular phone calls, as well as a really great coordination of effort in transmitting data to us that we were able to audit the information in a timely manner and issue the report in December. If you go to page 7, Summary of Audit Results and Required Communications, we met with the Audit Committee in December prior to issuing our reports, and we gave them a report on our required communications, which are listed here as well on page 7. In summary, there was no significant unusual transactions that we noted. We issued unmodified opinions on all of the city's financial statements, and that is the highest level of opinion you can get. We didn't note any significant related party matters or any going concern matters. We did involve our specialist, if you go to the next page, on illegal acts or fraud. Although we did not note any actual or suspected fraud with current management, due to all of the open subpoenas that are open right now with the city, we do involve our forensics team and our national office in reviewing some of our documentation related to inquiries that we've made. That's similar to the prior year, and we'll continue with that until all of the matters are closed. In addition, we got full cooperation from management in the finance departments across the organization, as well as legal and compliance and audit and ethics. We met with several people all over the city, and we got full cooperation from everybody. The next page, page 9, is the material weaknesses and significant deficiencies in internal control. We did note 5 items that we considered to be material weaknesses in the city's internal controls. I'm on page 9. The first one relates to information technology. We had our IT team look at the general controls over the Oracle Cloud, and what we noted was there was a significant delay in identifying inappropriate access into the Oracle Cloud system. Primarily what we saw was when employees separated from the city, they still had access, a significant amount of former employees had access. We did not go and test what they were able to access, but we saw that the city's controls over that area we identified as having a material weakness. In addition, the next 2 items you may recall from the prior year, they relate to the pension plans. We continue to see errors in our samples when we're testing overpayments and underpayments of amounts that are paid to retirees or beneficiaries. Although there's been some improvement from the prior years, we still continue to note that there are errors. In addition, we also noted that there were errors in some of the census data that was used in provided to the actuaries and used in determining the liability related to the pension plans for fire and police in that case. On page 10, in the next page, the next material weakness is the Opeb census data. We found, although the census data and the liability overall was correct, what we found in testing the underlying data was that the data was not correct in the allocation process. So management did not use the proper census data when allocating the Opeb liability between the general government, aviation, watershed management, and sanitation. So we had to propose audit differences in that area, and we found that to be, again, a material weakness. Finally, in the last material weakness that we noted is only related to the Department of Watershed, which is why it says that on page 10. And that related to inaccurate financial reporting. There were several undetected errors that were reported in the financial statements, which resulted in audit differences in the current year. And because those were found in audit, we concluded that those were material weaknesses in the financial reporting at the Department of Watershed Management. On the next few pages list the significant accounting estimates, and I'll just tell you at a high level, with these estimates, we use our specialists to assist us when applicable. For example, on the net patient liability and deferred inflows and outflows, we use our specialists, our actuarial specialists, to assist us in reviewing your actuary reports and concluding on the methods and assumptions used. Same thing on the next page 12 with the Opeb liability. We utilize our actuarial specialists for that as well. For claims payable, we do not use a specialist, but we do test the underlying data that is provided by management, and we evaluate whether the data is complete and accurate in order to determine the accounting estimate for the general claims liability. With other self-insurance reserves on page 14, workers' compensation, employee health, and dental, we do utilize our actuary in determining whether the recorded amounts are appropriate. The next page 15 is the significant financial statement disclosures. Those were the again, these are areas that we've identified early in the audit as well that are significant to the financial statements as well as significant to the audit approach. On page 16, I already spoke about the material weakness and general IT controls. As far as the audit, what we consider a significant risk, you'll see as management override of controls. That is not unique to the city. You see that in virtually every financial statement audit because management is in a unique position with regards to management override. We always consider that to be a significant risk, and we design our audit procedures to make sure that we have an element of unpredictability in our test work so that we can identify any override. There were no findings in this area. With regards to the rest of the presentation, it's really just a summary of our independence. We're independent of the city. And finally, it was just inquiries that we have made to the audit committee are summarized on page 19. I'll stop there, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have for me with regards to the 2020 financial statement audit.
Thank you so much. It looks like Councilmember Howard Shook has a question.
Yeah, thanks to KPMG. This is a relatively clean audit compared to some of the stuff I've seen over 20 years. I'm a little disturbed about the AIM finding in terms of access. That seems to be a repeat customer that I should think we'd have eradicated. Now, I want to thank KPMG. This is one of the best services City Council are the beneficiaries of. I, like some of my colleagues, have had the opportunity to speak in front of conventions of auditors in the city. And even though they don't laugh at anything, including some of my best jokes, your service is appreciated. Madam Chair, do we need a motion to accept and file?
That is a good question, Mr. Shook. I didn't have a legislative item in front of me. Ms. Kempson-Wright, do we need to do that?
No, these are not communications. They are just the annual audit reports that are provided.
Okay.
And where is KPMG in the scope of the contract?
So, Councilmember, this is Yolanda Carr. I do believe they have one more year. I'm not for sure if Amanda Noble is on the call, but she manages the contract for the audit.
Right. Okay, one more year. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Shook, I do think we have Ms. Noble with us if you had that question for her.
I mean,
otherwise,
I'm good unless she has something she needs to add.
Okay. Ms. Noble, if you have anything you want to add, feel free to speak up. Otherwise, I don't think, I think Mr. Shook was the only one who had a question or comment. All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Carr and Ms. Mitchell, and we will now move on to... You are welcome. We are now going to move on to our Georgia General Assembly legislative update. We have Mr. Jordan and Mr. McCraney. Oh, I was on mute. I'm thinking, we're going to move on to the Georgia General Assembly update. I think I was on mute when I said that. Mr. Jordan and Mr. McCraney. Don't know if we have opened up access to you, but let me know if you're online or shoot me a message if you're having trouble getting on.
Good afternoon, Chair I. This is Jerome Jordan. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Santana, for unmuting me. As I mentioned, my name is Jerome Jordan. I'm Deputy Chief of Staff. On the phone along with me is Reese McCraney, who's joining our InterGov efforts this session. In addition, Walter Vincent, who's part of the team, is actually unable to be here today because he's actually at the Assembly as the Judiciary Committee is about to discuss a street racing bill, which I will mention during the update. If we could move to slide 2 before you, as you'll see, of the 2021 legislative session. Today is the 15th legislative day. The General Assembly first convened on Monday, January 11th. The session is functioning in person, although they are following strict COVID protocols, which involve the members just being tested twice a week. The City of Atlanta's lobbyists do have a presence at the Assembly, but limited in-person engagement, but we do ensure that we are able to be down there at our staff level and also haul in at night to ensure that we're able to follow and speak on behalf of matters. As we could move to page 3, I want to briefly highlight some of the priority bills of concern and interest that have come before the Assembly at this point. As we continue with these updates before FEC throughout session, this list will grow. But I wanted to just briefly highlight a few bills, and then I'll turn it over to Reese to highlight some as well. First, I wanted to mention, as you know, one of the main points in our legislative package is to oppose any legislation that would negatively impact the airport. There are currently 2 pieces of legislation that have been dropped, HB 269 and HB 151. They both involve taxing the airport and adding an ad valorem tax for Clayton County. HB 269 is similar to a bill that was previously dropped last session by Representative Glanton. The City of Atlanta continues to oppose any bill or measure to try to apply a property tax to Clayton County. However, we have reached out to Clayton County officials, and we're having conversation with their staff to discuss some of any of their concerns they have related to service delivery to the airport, and whether we can have conversations about potential any delivery that they give to the airport and services and legitimate costs related to that. But we're definitely opposed to HB 269 and HB 151, and we'll continue to keep you updated on these bills. Currently, they have not been, they haven't had a hearing in committee, so we're going to continue to monitor and oppose these actions. A couple other bills I wanted to mention. SB 10 is related to street racing. As you know, street racing was not only an issue that we are dealing with in the City of Atlanta, but also in other metro cities. SB 10 is meant to address that. It's actually being heard and Judiciary Committee today, and that's why I mentioned Walter Vincent is there. We're generally supportive of this legislation. We want to ensure that local governments have additional tools to address street racing. We also want to make sure that there aren't any legislation doesn't have any unintended consequences that would get people caught up in the criminal justice system for minor offenses. HB 150 was heard this week. This bill would prohibit local governments from adopting any policy that would prohibit the connection or reconnection of any utility service based on the type of source of energy or fuel. We have concerns with HB 150 because it preempts local governments, and so we opposed this and had our Chief Sustainability Officer speak against this matter. And then SB 133, this is a bill that would ban no-knock warrants. It was recently dropped, but has not received a hearing. But I wanted to highlight that since this was in our legislative package, and as we continue to go through session and monitor this, we will keep the council updated on this as well. And now I'll turn it over to Reese.
Thank you, Jerome, and good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you so much for having us today. On the next slide, if you would please, one of the areas that we're strongly focusing on is any effort really to limit access to the ballot box or suppress the vote. After last year's historic numbers and turnout for the general election and, of course, the Senate runoff just last month in January, what we have seen so far is a rash of bills that have cropped up to essentially suppress the vote, limit access to the ballot box, and essentially disallow members of our community and around Georgia to have fair and free access to the ballot. So we're strenuously opposed to that, as you might imagine. A couple of bills that we would like to call attention to is HB 270, which was just recently introduced and sponsored by Representative Barry Fleming, and it would prohibit absentee ballots from being used within 10 days of an election, and implement the recommendation from the Association of County Commissioners on the election integrity. So that's one that we're tracking. There are about a dozen or so in addition to that one that we're also looking at, and that we're working with members of the delegation on. Another few examples are eliminating the motor voter law. SB 69 would seek to do that. Prohibiting out-of-state voters in the general election from voting in a U.S. House or Senate runoff, that's SB 70, and eliminating no excuse absentee and limiting it to rare exceptions in SB 71, and prohibiting third-party and nonprofit groups from sending absentee ballot applications to voters across the state. That's in SB 73. So we'll be working with members of the delegation, as I mentioned, to fight back any of those efforts and keep you all updated as new bills drop in that effort.
Thank you, Reese. And Madam Chair, members of the committee, if we can move to page 5. Real briefly, I did want to mention that last week the InterGov team presented to our Atlanta delegation, which included House and Senate members, and there are multiple members from the City Council who are at that meeting too. And I want to say thank you to them for attending. And as we continue throughout session, like I said, we will keep you posted. I expect their list of bills to grow that we update you on. But I appreciate the opportunity to give you this update, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan and Mr. McCraney. It looks like Councilor Matt Westmoreland has his speaker button pushed, so I'm going to go to Mr. Westmoreland, and anybody else who wants to speak, please hit your speaker button or send me a message.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. Could you speak to what, if any, conversations have happened or that you expect to happen with members of the General Assembly as it relates to the affordable housing pieces of our legislative agenda?
Thank you, Councilman Westmoreland, for raising that question. We've had conversations with members of the delegation. One of the things we wanted to ensure was we wanted to brief the full delegation on the package as we did last week, and then this week we are taking conversations with leadership in the delegation regarding our specific affordable housing pieces of legislation and the plan to introduce those as well. But I also wanted to mention, now that you raised the point of affordable housing, that as we go through the session, while our legislative package is mostly focused on the airport, so it's not as robust as we would love to have it, we're also looking for other bills that are introduced throughout the course of session and for opportunities to support those that would give the city additional tools for affordable housing. And we'll keep you posted on those, regarding those as well.
Okay, appreciate it.
Anyone else have questions for our legislative affairs team? All right, well, thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Jordan, Mr. McCraney, and we look forward to hearing from you all throughout the session.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Kempson-Wright, we are now at our consent agenda, our ordinances first read, and if you would please read those in for us, I would appreciate it.
Yes, item number 1 is 210099, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the Chief Financial Officer on behalf of the City of Atlanta to create a consolidated trust fund which will combine the tennis center's trust accounts as indicated herein. Item number 2 is 210010, an ordinance authorizing the mayor or her designee to exercise renewal number 1 for SD 9969, Workers' Compensation Third-Party Administration with PMA Management Corp. to provide workers' compensation third-party administration services to the City of Atlanta on behalf of the Department of Finance for a term of 2 years, retroactively effective December 26, 2020 through December 25, 2022, and an amount not to exceed $2,272,478.00 to ratify services rendered in connection with the agreement beginning December 26, 2020, in accordance with Section 21163, subsection C of Article 10, Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, all services to be charged and paid from the account numbers listed. And item number 3 is 21000101, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee to waive certain provisions under Sections 21541B and 21545B of the Code of Ordinances and authorizing the mayor or her designee to enter into an agreement with Livable Buckhead to purchase 0.007 acre of land for development as a park to be located in parcel 39 of land lot 46 of the 17th Land District, City of Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia, on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation in the amount of $101,000.00. The city's purchase price, closing costs, due diligence, signage, site security, site stabilization, fencing, and other development costs to be paid from the accounts listed herein and for other purposes. And that concludes all of our first reads.
Hello?
You all hear me?
Madam Chair?
Sorry about that. I tried to hit my volume button and hung up the phone by mistake. Ms. Kempson-Wright, are you done with the last of the first reads?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, those items, apologies for my technical flub there. Those items will move through the process and come back to us in 2 weeks for our consideration. Takes us to our regular agenda, Section J, Ordinances for Second Reading. Item number 4 is 210071, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee to enter into a special procurement agreement, SGS 1200521, Professional Development Services, Carl Vinson Institute, with the University of Georgia pursuant to Section 2-1191.1, Article 10, Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances on behalf of the Department of Finance for a term of 3 years and an amount not to exceed $120,000. All contracted work to be charged to and paid from the funding numbers listed herein and for other purposes. And my understanding is that the administration would like us to hold this paper. So that's my motion.
Second.
All right, let's open the vote.
Vote is open. Will everyone please vote?
This is Archibald. I seem to have lost my connection. I vote yes.
Thank you. That makes 6 yeses, 0 no's. This item is held. The computer is saying favorable, but it was a motion to hold. This item will remain in FEC. Item number 5 is 21-0072, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee to amend the fiscal year 2021 general fund budget by anticipating and appropriating funds in the amount of $96,561.10 for receipt of insurance funds related to the December 20th, 2018 plane crash at English Park to allocate funding for the purpose of the Atlanta-Fulton County Pre-Arrest Diversion Initiative and for other reasons and for other purposes. And we have Mr. Deloche. All right. Was that Mr. Shook?
Correct.
All right. I'll second that. Let's open the vote.
Vote is open.
Right. 6 yeses, 0 no's. This item is favorable. Item number 6. We have a substitute in the package. Let me find that. It is 21-0073, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee to amend the fiscal year 2021 general fund budget by anticipating and appropriating $1,577,922.65 for receipt of Federal Emergency Management Agency reimbursement funds related to Georgia disaster COVID-19 and for other purposes. And
bring the substitute forward.
Thank you, which adds accounts for the departments in Section 1. I will second that. So let's vote on bringing the substitute before us.
Vote is open.
Okay. 6 yeses, 0 no's. The substitute is before us. I will make a motion to adopt on substitute.
Second.
All right. If there's no discussion, let's open the vote.
The vote is open.
Well, wait, now, Mr. Dickens. Here we go. 6 yeses, 0 no's. The item is favorable on substitute. Brings us to number, I'm going to take 7, 8, 9, and 11 together as they are all council member papers. So 7 is 21-0075, an ordinance by Councilmember J.P. Matsukite. Let me pause 1 second. Let's jump down to 11 because I need to bring the substitute forward and then we can bring them all together. So 21-0083, an ordinance by Councilmembers Matt Westmoreland and Joyce Shepard, authorizing a donation amount not to exceed $2,500 from the Post 2 at-large carryforward account to the Atlanta Technical College Foundation and for other purposes. And the substitute, am I right about that, Ms. Kempson, right, that there's a substitute for this one?
Not for number 7. There's a substitute for number 11.
Yeah, 11 that I just read it.
Sorry.
I just read in 11, so we need to bring forward the substitute on 11.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking in the package to see where it is. Can you just tell me what the substitute does?
Yes, the substitute will actually change the total amount to $4,000. It adds the account for District 12 council member and allocates a donation of $1,500 from her account.
Okay, thank you.
And I can read the
made a motion
caption if you need it.
That would be great because I don't see it in the package.
Okay. It is an ordinance by council members Matt Westmoreland and Joy Shepard, as substituted by Finance Executive Committee, authorizing a donation in an amount not to exceed $4,000.00 from the Post 2 at-large and District 12 carry-forward account to the Atlanta Technical College Foundation and for other purposes.
All right, thank you. I think Mr. Shook made a motion to bring forward the substitute. I will second that. So let's vote on bringing forward the substitute.
The vote is open.
All right, 6 yeses, 0 no's to bring forward the substitutes. Now I'm going to go back up and I'm going to read 7, 8, and 9 as well, and we can take those together. So 7 is 21-0-075, an ordinance by Councilmember J.P. Maxicate authorizing a donation amount not to exceed $5,000 from the Council District 8 carry-forward account to the Atlanta Police Foundation Operation Shield to assist the Chatsworth Homeowners Association with the purchase of a PTZ streaming video camera and for other purposes. 8 is 21-0-076, an ordinance by Councilmember Jennifer Knight authorizing a donation amount not to exceed $2,500 from the District 6 carry-forward account to the Brookwood Hills Community Club to support their neighborhood security patrol and for other purposes. Item number 9 is 21-0-077, an ordinance by Councilmember Jennifer Knight authorizing a donation amount not to exceed $2,500 from the District 6 carry-forward account to the Lindbergh Morosco Neighborhood Association and for other purposes. And we had read 11 already, so I will make a motion to approve those 4 items.
Shook seconds.
All right, let's open the vote.
Vote is open.
All right, those 6 yeses, 0 no's. Those 4 items are favorable. Brings us to 10, which is 21-0-082, an ordinance by Councilmembers J.P. Maxicate, Howard Shook, Andre Dickens, Matt Westmoreland, and Amir Faroki to amend the Charter, Subpart A, Article 6, Chapter 3, Section 6-315B, Subsection 3 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances for the purpose of increasing the 3 1/2% appropriation of the City of Atlanta general budget for the public infrastructure maintenance and improvement account to 5% in order to ensure adequate annual funding for routine maintenance, repair, and replacement of public infrastructure and for other purposes. Mr. Maxicate, what is your pleasure on this one?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you probably know, this is an amendment to the charter, and so there are some rules that we would need to follow with regard to the number of reads and advertising. And so to meet that, I'm going to move that we hold this. However, I would like to have some discussion about this because I think this is a really important topic. For those of you listening on this, this is a piece of legislation that would really build on what the prior council did, which I thought was very wise, which was to allocate 3.5% of the general fund budget for the maintenance of our transportation infrastructure. And as we know right now, through our work at the Transportation Committee, we have about a $900 million deficit in our transportation infrastructure repairs, and we really need to take some steps and have some serious conversation about how we move forward with funding. This piece of legislation would increase the funding from the general fund by 0.5% each of the next 3 fiscal years from 3.5% to 5%. Each one of those 0.5% represents about $3.5 million. That certainly would not be a fix to our funding deficit, but it would help us. It would move us forward. Again, I want to open this conversation up because it's something that we all have been wrestling with. I also do and am aware that we are in a pretty difficult financial time right now during this pandemic. And, you know, we know that we need to be fiscally responsible. So trying to come up with some legislation here that would allow us to make some structural moves to increase our funding for streets and sidewalks while doing it in a financially responsible way. So that's what this legislation is intended to do, and I hope that we have this conversation you know, in this body as well as the full council as we move this forward. But my recommendation today is to hold.
Okay, and did you want to amend it today before you held, or you're just going to wait and do all the amendments next when we get back to it?
You know, I can do either. I'll wait and do all the amendments. There are some other individuals who want to add their name to this paper, and so we can add those individuals when we bring it back up next time.
Okay. It looks like Mr. Shook has his hand up. Anybody else who has questions or wants to have this initial discussion now, just hit your speaker button. Mr. Shook? Mr. Shook, you might be on mute. Mr. Shook, you still with us? Let me see if I can get a hold of him. I believe Mr. Shook's trying to call back in. Is there anybody else who has a question while we wait for Mr. Shook?
Hello?
Oh, there you are, Mr. Shook.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was excommunicated, so I didn't hear the last fragments of what JP was saying. Our infrastructure is falling apart every day, every week, every month. We all know it. The administration knows it. I'm willing to hit the pause button here so as to engage administration on a, well, what can we do? How are we going to move forward basis? I totally support Mr. Matsukai's approach here, and I'm going to reluctantly vote at the pause button, but I mean, this is critical. Thank you.
I will second Mr. Shook on that. Infrastructure is one of the main things I hear about from my constituents. That we need to do more, and we need to figure out a way that guarantees that we do more. All right. Seeing nobody else with a hand up, Mr. Matsukai, did you make a motion to hold?
I did, yes.
Okay. I'm happy to second that. Let's open the vote on the motion to hold.
The vote is open.
Mr. Shook, what say you? Have we lost Mr. Shook again?
One second, Madam Chair. Yes, it does appear he was disconnected again.
Okay. Well,
I think he's back.
Mr. Shook, you back?
Yes, thank you. I
Okay.
support the hold.
Motion to hold. What was your vote?
Yay.
All right. People are going to think I have the magic kick shook off the call button, but I don't. All right, that was 6 yes and 0 no's. So this item remained held in committee for further discussion. All right, so that was item number 10. We did 11 when we did 7, 8, 9. That brings us to our resolutions. Section K, item 12 is 21R 3107, a resolution by Councilmember Jennifer Knight authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to refund customers for overpayments to water and sewer accounts in an amount of blank. All funds to be charged to and paid from Fund Department Organization and account numbers 5051. 0001, 122, 6009, and for other purposes. We are not ready to fill in the blanks on this one yet, so I'll make a motion to hold.
Second.
Let's open the vote.
The vote is open.
All right. That was 6 yeses, 0 no's, and it remains held in committee. Next item is 13, 21R 3109, a resolution by Councilmember Jennifer Knight to urge the City of Atlanta to work with the Environmental Protection Division of the State of Georgia and or the Georgia General Assembly to determine whether there is a manner to address the environmental nuisance of gas-powered leaf blowers and for other purposes. This was a personal paper of mine. It's an issue I hear from constituents, but in my initial discussions with the law department, this is an area that we are most likely preempted, but I just wanted to have the discussion with our friends across the street in the EPD and see if there is a possibility of addressing this some other way. So I will make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, let's open the vote.
The vote is open.
All right, 6 yeses, 0 no's. This item's favorable. Takes us down to item 14 is 21R 3150, a resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or designee in accordance with Section 2-1191 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances to execute a sole source agreement SS-F-1210150 Milner Technology Maintenance with Milner Technologies, Inc. on behalf of the Atlanta Police Department and Department of Finance for a term of 1 year with one-year renewal option effective April 1, 2021 through March 31, 2022 to purchase Unisearch Image Director System Maintenance and Ongoing Support Services in an amount not to exceed $182,720, all contracted work to be charged to and paid from funding numbers listed herein and for other purposes. I would like to hear, and I don't know if it's Ms. Daniel or somebody else on the team, why this one is a sole source agreement.
Hello, this is Felicia Daniel. Can you hear me?
I can.
Excellent. So I will speak to finance and why this was a sole source. As a result of the 2018 cyber attack, our previous document management solution was compromised and the data security measures were interrupted. All the Fortis data was lost and deemed irretrievable. We were looking at that time for something to replace the document management and APD had this active contract in place, and so the Department of Finance piggybacked off of this active contract such that we could continue our document management service needs.
All right, does anybody have questions on this paper?
Move approval.
All right, I'll second. Let's open the vote.
The vote is open.
6 yeses, 0 noes. This item is favorable. Item number 15 is 21R3151, a resolution by Finance Executive Committee adopting the fiscal year 2022 update to the City of Atlanta Financial Stabilization Plan for years 2022 to 2026 and for other purposes. And my understanding is that Finance would like us to hold this. I think it's because we don't have all the attachments done yet. Is that correct, Finance?
That's correct. Yes, Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to hold.
Shook seconds.
Let's open the vote.
Vote is open.
Six yeses, 0 noes. This item will remain held in committee. Number 16 is 21R3152, a resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or her designee to accept a donation of consultant services from the Atlanta Regional Commission Georgia Commute Options on behalf of the Department of Customer Service, Atlanta ATL 311, for the purpose of the development and implementation of a telework training, quality assurance, and employee feedback program for a term of 3 months, an approximate value an amount not to exceed $3,400, and to execute any required agreement for accepting the donation and for other purposes. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'm kind of curious, actually, given the amount, why does this even come to us?
I do not know why. I'm assuming it's because it's a donation.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's fine. Second.
Okay. Let's open the vote.
The vote is open.
This item is favorable, 6 yeses, 0 noes. This brings us to our dual referred items of papers that were sent to 2 committees. Item number 17 is 21R3108, a resolution by Council Members Antonio Brown and Dustin Hillis to urge the Georgia Department of Public Health to revise the 1A plus population designation within the Georgia Immunization Program to include the full set of essential workers identified by the Centers for Disease Control Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices to urge every eligible person to receive a COVID-19 vaccination and for other purposes. Mr. Westmoreland, can you tell us what happened in CD?
I can. We had a lively discussion involving the council's 2 registered nurses, and it passed unanimously.
All right. Do you want to make a motion to
I'm happy to make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Took with a question.
Yes.
In light of the sort of uncomfortable news that came out yesterday in CU about the number of solid waste workers who are infected with COVID and the resulting diminution of services. Do we know, and we ask a lot of questions about this in committee, do we know why this cohort was so inordinately affected?
I do not know, and I don't know if we have our...
That's for the committee. That's for whoever administration people are on the call.
Yeah, I don't know if we have HR, if we have our medical officer, if we have anybody that feels qualified to answer that question.
And we can move on.
Yeah, this is
we can move on.
I'm not the administration. I would like to say the answer that I did receive in asking that same question is that the source of the virus can be from work environment, or it could be activities outside of work. And the answer that I got was they really weren't clear about the source or the origin of this. So, but I would like to know if there's anything more by way of a more definitive answer.
No, thank you, because obviously we want to prevent more workers from getting the virus. We want to help the workers who do have the virus, get healthy and reclaim their lives. And so I was just wondering, and maybe by the end of the meeting, someone else will come on to give us some more information.
Yeah, I believe we have HR on, Commissioner Norman, and if he can be unmuted, maybe he can enlighten us. Mr. Norman, are you with us, and can we hear him? Maybe I was wrong about that. Well, why don't we, in the meantime, vote on the paper, and we'll see if we can get some more information while we're doing that.
I'll renew my motion to approve.
Second.
All right, let's open the vote.
The vote is open.
All right, 6 yeses, 0 no's. This item's favorable. One more call if we have somebody from HR. All right, well, at the end of the meeting, if we can get connected and get some information, that's great. Let's move on to the next item for now, which is 1821R. 3112, a resolution by Councilmember Michael Julian Bond directing the mayor, her designee, in accordance with the procedures set out in Section 2-1187 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, to direct the City of Atlanta Department of Procurement to initiate a process to secure proposals from qualified vendors for the implementation of an automated school zone speed enforcement program as authorized by OCGA 40-14-18 and purposes. Councilmember Shepard is not with us today, but it's my understanding that this was adverse in public safety legal administration earlier this week, and that would be my motion as well.
Second.
Councilmember Archibald.
Yes, I just wanted to say that whenever I see that the council is directing a member of the bureaucracy outside of finance or law, I'm always a bit leery of that. So just wanted to put that out there for us to be careful, that kind of thing.
All right. I appreciate that. I'm sure that the Department of Procurement appreciates that too. Let's open the vote.
The vote is open.
6 yeses, 0 no's. This item is adverse. See what else is on the agenda. Give me 1 second. I think that brings us all the way to item number 41, which is 21-0-042, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee waiving the competitive source selection requirements contained in Article 10, Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, and authorizing the mayor, her designee, on behalf of the City of Atlanta to enter into agreements with performers, artists, media outlets, and sponsors for the 2021 Atlanta Jazz Festival in Atlanta, and allowing the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs to charge admission fees for select events at the festival, and directing that all jazz festival revenues and expenses be deposited and expended from the accounts listed below and for other purposes. I do believe that we have a substitute. If you all remember from 2 weeks ago, we discussed this paper and had concerns about the fact that we still have our public health order in place and that planning for large events was a little risky at the moment. So my understanding is that the substitute adds language necessary to ensure that we incur no liability if the dates change. Ms. Kempton-Wright, did it change the caption?
No, there is no change to the caption at all.
Okay. And it's a substitute or it's an amendment?
I'm sorry, on your chair notes it says an amendment, but it is a substitute as it states in the committee handout form.
Okay, all right. Well, I will first make a motion to bring the, do we need to pull it off hold before we?
No, you don't have to pull it off hold.
Okay.
No.
Okay. I'll bring a motion to bring for the substitute. Mr. Dickens, do you want to speak to bringing forward the substitute, or you want to speak to the paper once we have it in front of us?
No, I thought we were at the end of the agenda, and I have a separate question that's not related to this legislation.
Okay, all right. We're almost.
So my button pressed a while back.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We're almost at the end of the legislative agenda, then I'll get back to you. So I'm going to make a motion to bring forward the substitute on item 41. All right, let's open the vote on the substitute.
The vote is open.
Okay, there we go. 6 yeses, 0 no's. The substitute is before us, and I will make a motion to adopt on substitute.
Second.
That didn't sound enthusiastic. But let's open the vote anyway. All right, this item is 6 yeses, 0 no's. This item is favorable on substitute. I think we have one more paper. Okay. Item number 41 in section N, referred from other committees, is 21R 3110, a resolution by council members Antonio Brown and Madeline Archibong, and substituted by City Utilities Committee to request that the financial officer conduct a study to determine the feasibility of creating a new water bottling and distribution municipal enterprise that will generate revenues for the city without placing further strain on the city tax base, while creating a workforce development program to create middle wage jobs and for other purposes. And
second.
I didn't make a motion. I was reading the caption. This came from City Utilities, I believe, and I'm assuming it was favorable if it ended up with us. And I do believe that Mr. Brown, who is one of the sponsors, is on the line if anybody has questions for Mr. Brown. All right. Mr. Shook, are you making a motion?
Yes.
Second, Archibong. All right, second, Archibong. All right. If there is no discussion, we'll open the vote.
The vote is open.
Ms. Kempton-Wright, I hit the wrong button. Will you record me as a yes?
Yes.
All right. This item is favorable. 6 yeses, 0 no's. I believe that concludes all of our legislative items. Did I miss anything, Ms. Kempton-Wright?
No, that does conclude all of our legislative items.
Well, Madam Chair, unless you insist on some FaceTime on Monday, I'll be willing to reconsider my abstention on the goals and objectives.
That would be lovely. Mr. Shook suggested that one of the goals and objectives be that I smile more. But you're going to make that amendment, or are we just going to adopt it as is?
No, I'm good. I love it.
All right. Do we need to vote on the reconsideration?
Yes, we can vote to reconsider the 2021 goals and objectives.
Okay. Shook has made a motion. I've seconded it. Let's open the vote on reconsidering the goals and objectives.
The vote is open.
Okay, it looks like that's 5 yeses, 1 no for reconsideration, but it is the papers, the goals and objectives are back before us, and I will make a motion to adopt our goals and objectives so Mr. Shook can change his vote.
Yeah, I'll second. I want to know who voted no.
Mr. Westmoreland voted no.
No, that figures.
Okay, let's open the vote on the goals and objectives.
The vote is open.
All right, our goals and objectives now have been adopted unanimously, 6 yeses, 0 noes. That is the conclusion of our legislative items, and so we are on to Councilmember Dickens.
Yeah, I had a question. I found myself not on any committees this week that could have talked about this, but I wanted to know if there was someone from the administration that knows more about the NBA All-Star Game coming to Atlanta. It never reached our desk as council members to see if we were interested in that occurring or not, or at least it didn't reach my desk. And it didn't come before any committees I was on. So I wanted to, in this FEC, have the opportunity for, whether that's a COO or chief of staff or deputy or someone to kind of talk about how does the decision get made and what kind of safety precautions are going to go into effect. NBA All-Star Game tends to, we've had it here in Atlanta before. It brings a lot of excitement, a lot of parties, a lot of clubs and entertainment, and venues get packed. People don't social distance. People may or may not wear masks. And this event is happening in a few weeks. So I wanted to see how council can get an update, a notice, and some information about NBA All-Star Game and what involvement the NBA has engaged the city in and what COVID protocols are going into place. Madam Chair, is there someone that you know of that's already on this call that can speak to that?
I don't know if we happen to have our COO or anybody from his office or our chief of staff or anybody from her office who can speak to that. I have not heard anything about it more than what you described, but I'm curious as well because that is an ongoing issue that I get questions from constituents on about enforcing the state's limits in nightclubs and bars. And you're right that this probably is a event that's going to bring people out to celebrate. So if there's anybody from the administration that can speak to the plans for this weekend, or what's the date of it? I don't think it's this weekend,
of March.
but okay.
Yeah.
Well, for whoever is out there listening, who can take this back to the powers that be, or if the law department has an answer, I guess we sort of springing this on people. If we can't get an answer today, I think council would appreciate somebody getting back to it.
Well, let me just say it this way then.
I mean, the answer could be, we'll get back to you, but I was anticipating that the Finance Executive Committee would have one of those three people on the phone at all times. That was a request made, a committee goal, an expectation. So if the answer is we're not here for the call, that gives a different set of indications to the council, then we'll get back to you about what protocols are going to be in place. That is something that's also something else. So,
this is Nina Hickson.
Thank you.
Ms. Hickson, thank you. If you have anything you can share with us on this.
Unfortunately, I don't have any information on the All-Star Game or any outreach to, at least as relates to the law department. We haven't received any outreach on that. I am attempting to see if I can find somebody who can give you an answer in that regard.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hickson.
Right.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate that. Let me turn to Mr. Shook and see what his question or comment is, and then maybe we will have somebody on the line.
Yeah, so thank you to Mr. Dickens for opening this line of questioning. We've heard from law, so thank you, Ms. Hickson. Now let's hear hopefully from finance. I assume they're on the call with the finance committee. Were they consulted about this, and in terms of how much revenue this move should bring in?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, finance is basically in the same posture as law. We've heard about it just recently, but we have no details at this stage.
Okay. Thank you. To invite people in here for a mega sporting event seems contrary to all of the messaging and all of that government's putting out about how we should comport ourselves. And, to be honest, and I'm not even sure, I'm not an NBA fan. I don't know if the Players Association even supports this. I know that some of the stars, off of whose backs all the money comes from, are not enthusiastic about it. I'd like to hear from APD. Should I just evacuate Far Road in advance? And that's a serious question, and I await an answer.
Let's give it another minute or so and see if I have reached out to the COO's office also and see if anybody can join us. Hold on one second.
Here's another question. Normally major sporting events involve some kind of bidding contest. What, if anything, did we throw into that in order to win this?
Councilmember Ide, can you hear me?
Oh. Okay, hold on one second. I can. I was talking with the Chief of Staff's office, and they are trying to get somebody on the line right now.
Got it. So this is Matthew Bartley. This is Matthew Bartley with the Mayor's office, Councilmember. So I'm also working just to help bring somebody on that can help to address the questions. But I did just want to confirm to you and Councilmember Dickens as well that we are on the call and looking to see what answers we can provide for you.
And Mr. Bartley, Ms. Chubb said they were trying to get Felipe Dunbar on the line, but they were having to get a message to our IT folks to unmute, I think. So let's just give it, I don't know if you yourself have answers to these questions, but that's, Ms. Chubb was trying to get somebody on the line who might be able to provide a little more information.
Right. No, I will defer to Felipe if he's able to join, Councilmember.
Okay. Let's see. And we also have Deputy Chief Shearbaum. If Mr. Shook, if you'd like to hear from APD, I believe that Deputy Chief Shearbaum is available.
Yeah, only if I'm going to get an honest answer.
Hey, good afternoon.
I find him to be an honest man.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Ryan, Councilmember Shook. As with any large event coming to the city, we are currently assessing what will be occurring both on the official calendar and what we know and believe to be unofficial events occurring. So we're assessing now what staffing modification actions we will take. Those may include 12-hour shifts, off dates canceled, reallocation of resources in other geographic areas. So it's too early to advise exactly what our realignment is to support this event to ensure we have the right number of officers in the right areas. As that is developed, we will certainly provide to this committee and others.
Yeah, you weren't asked, were you?
I'm sorry, sir?
You weren't asked, were you?
I were not asked, sir?
You weren't asked about this. Do we want the All-Star game here?
I'm not aware of exactly what communication was made with the police department, sir. We can certainly determine that and provide it.
You know what? Oh, boy. I hear you. I know the position you're in. You got bosses. Your bosses have bosses, and your bosses have bosses. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. I still think we are waiting to see. I still think the administration is trying to get us a little bit more information. So,
yeah, they need to get here.
Hey, good afternoon. It's Wilfred Ambrose from the Mayor's Office of Emergency Preparedness.
Oh, thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Did you hear our earlier discussion, or would you like to have the question repeated?
I like it repeated. I mean, I'm online. Sorry, I just logged in.
Okay. Well, either Mr. Shook or Mr. Dickens, do you want to?
Yeah, I can ask you.
Repeat your concerns.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask how we are going to treat the All-Star game from a safety perspective, emergency preparedness perspective, you know, all of the things that go into a large event, but mainly this time, this large event is occurring during a pandemic that, you know, it's still very scary. And while the event itself may be somewhat controlled, as every other basketball game has limited attendance and all these safety precautions, we know these style events bring regional visitors to our, you know, to our clubs and hotels and even in our streets to party. So have you devised a plan? Have you, one, been brought up to speed on this and were included in the decision process to bring this together? But two, what is going to be put in place to make sure that we don't have a spike?
Great question, sir. So let me give you a little bit of background on this. And just so you know, we linked up with the NBA yesterday. As of yesterday, they're still in negotiations, not only with the venue, but with the hotels about whether Atlanta is going to be hosting the All-Star game. There has been also discussions between the NBA Players Association and the NBA about their concerns of doing the event here in Atlanta. So as we speak right now, there is a lot of fluidity going on, and we don't have at this point a decision that is going to be hosted. Now, there is, as I said, the situation is fluid, and as we move forward, the NBA has made an agreement to let us know as soon as they have some sort of decision whether they're leaning for Atlanta or not. Another thing I want to make sure that everybody understands is it's going to be a very small footprint. And when I say footprint, we're talking about maybe 1 to 2 hotels, and they're going to be, and as you know, the NBA has probably the most strict protocols regarding COVID-19. They're going to try to maintain that bubble to protect the players and their staff. Because if one of them gets affected, it creates sort of like a cascade effect affecting everybody. So, like I say, going back to earlier comment, it's still fluid. The little that we know and they have shared with us is going to be a non-ticketed event. No fans are going to be invited. And if they have any guests, will be VIP guests, which we understand that it may be considered VIP guests limited to family and personal trainers. Okay? Another thing is the venue is going to have very limited number of spectators. And like I say, the VIP guests, trainers, people from personnel from the NBA staff, from the association, and they be credential only because they got to keep that bubble. Anything that touches any players, any training staff, any coaches, they're going to have, NBA is going to provide their own transportation along with the testing. And we expect that if indeed Atlanta is tasked to host it, it's going to be a very small footprint. And when I say small footprint, it will be around the State Farm Arena with very few street closures. They're not going to have anything outside the arena, any events whatsoever. Everything is going to be within the arena, and the concert that usually takes place is going to be done remotely. So, council member, as you say that, we're still waiting for a word from the NBA and for their plan regarding COVID-19. I am sorry to tell you, but I don't have any additional information for you regarding what because they haven't updated us as of today. So as soon as we do, we'll ensure that you guys are updated as well.
Yes, first I wanted to say thank you very much. What you said was helpful as a starting position. Really quickly, what's your name again so I can write it down?
My name is Felipe, Felipe, and the last name is Denbrock, D as in David, E-N, capital B as in boy, R-O-K. I'm the Executive Director for Emergency Preparedness. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, in the background of my house was a street racer. You heard that loud noise, believe it or not. Anyway, so Felipe, you gave me a lot of information. You gave us a lot of information about what the NBA is saying their protocols are and their rules are, and I think that that's what the NBA cares most about is the players, the staff, the trainers, the league, and that will have a very small footprint because they know how to maintain a bubble. A care is $1 billion bubble. Us, on the other hand, we don't have the ability, particularly in this state, with the state being open right now, allowing a lot of what I would personally say is unsafe behavior to persist. Then you don't have a very small footprint. The NBA has this event causes a ripple. That ripple is what I would think is the most important part for the Executive Director of Emergency Preparedness, the administration of the city and the council of the city and the police of the city and the citizens of the city to be most concerned with is not, I'm not at all under any obligation to care much about what happens with the NBA other than as a fan. But what I am concerned with is everything that happens outside of that. As someone who has seen lots of all-star games, like about 3 here in Atlanta, they attract people, even in COVID. So regular club nights here in Atlanta attracts people, regular parties, and hotels and things of that nature. So are you now engaging in conversations about beyond the NBA's activities, beyond the NBA's bubble and control of their small footprint, and you're now starting to have conversations about what happens outside of that, Felipe?
Yes, sir. We started planning as if we're going to, the NBA All-Star. At the end of the day, sir, it will be, and again, I'm not giving you the runaround. It's helpful if they let us know where we stand. We have not only a public safety plan, but our plan, as soon as we know, is to get the Board of Health heavily involved in this, along with Atlanta-Fulton County Emergency Management Agency. Because there's several factors, like you mentioned. The moment that it is official, if indeed it takes place, one of the things that is going to be a huge spike is going to be the entertainment clubs, the nightclubs. So regardless of the NBA's position about, it's a small event, a small footprint, regardless, it's going to affect people. As such, we already started conversations not only among city agencies, but our partners leverage those relationships to start working on a lean forward position of what are we going to do next. So yes, sir, we started.
And Mr. Dickens, we do have the COO, John Keene, on the line now also, who's also available to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ide, and thank you, Felipe, for, if you can hang on the line just in case there's other questions. And I'd like Mr. Keene to kind of chime in on this. And I mean, I just hope that no one thinks I'm pointing a finger or blaming at anybody or anything like that. What I'm trying to say is, if I knew that there was that the city of Atlanta was in contention or being considered, if they wrote a letter to the city council members, I would write a letter back saying, no, I don't think that's a smart idea. I disagree with it. And I'm wondering how we got to this point, and then I'm wondering, well, once that's done, now how do we handle this situation if it is to come here? But I also still want to deal with how do these decisions get made? Because if a letter came to me, John Keene, if a letter came to me, if a conversation came to me, I would say, not this year. Sign us up for 4 other years, but not this year. So, Mr. Keene, how are we in this? And are there conversations that's going to come before council about how we would like to see safety protocols in place if it is to come here?
Councilmember Dickens, this is John Keene, Chief Operating Officer. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. Certainly appreciate the concerns, and thank you to Felipe for going through the understanding of what we know to date. I think there's a couple important things to make sure are very clear. One is we did not seek this out. I did not receive a letter asking whether or not we were interested, asking for our permission. We did not seek this out. The second is, once we've now become notified that these are the plans, we have begun our process to make sure that all of the things that have been discussed are being addressed, both from a public safety standpoint, from a COVID-19 safety precaution standpoint, public health standpoint. And so our teams at APD, as Deputy Shearbaum mentioned, as well as our Office of Emergency Preparedness, are now engaged with the right folks in order to make sure that we are making those appropriate plans. But I think it's important to note that, again, we did not seek this out.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Mr. King. I'm glad that the administration nor the council sought this out. Is there a set of messaging going back to the NBA saying, thank you for considering us. We know we are the darling of the universe, of the place to come, but not this year. If you could, please don't do this. Is there any posture like that is being had on behalf of the citizens of Atlanta by the leadership of Atlanta?
Councilmember, I have not, at this point, had any conversations around that, but I certainly am happy to obviously engage in those discussions and understand, what has led us to this point and what our options are moving forward.
Thank you. I'm done.
All right, Mr. Shook, do you have any questions for the folks we've gotten on the line?
Yeah, and I do, and I apologize. I got knocked off just when this was getting good, so I may be repeating myself. Whose idea was this?
I believe it was the NBA's idea, but Mr. Keene can answer that.
No, from the city of Atlanta, who said, that's great.
Councilmember Schick, I think you may have missed that part, but to make it clear,
so who was it?
I'm not aware of anybody from the city of Atlanta. We did not seek out.
Oh, come on!
I'm not aware
Somebody
of anybody
did.
from the city of Atlanta.
Oh, come on! Somebody did. Who?
My answer is the same, Councilmember. I'm not aware of anybody from the city of Atlanta having sought this out.
So nobody did. Is that right? Nobody did.
Nobody from the city of Atlanta, Councilmember.
Well, that's the biggest bunch of horse hockey I've heard today. Did you ask APD about this?
Well, Councilmember, APD is engaged at this point. After we became aware of the fact that the NBA had plans to host here in the city, we obviously get our team, both APD as well as our Office of Emergency Preparedness, engaged and involved to understand what the plans are and how we can make sure we are prepared from a public safety and public health standpoint.
Yeah. So let me make sure I get this straight, and then I'll get off the call for the moment. The NBA went to the city and said, you want to do this? And nobody responded, and so we ended up with it. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm not aware of the NBA having come to the city and asked.
Okay. So you don't know if we said yes, no, or maybe, or if the NBA even asked, but we've ended up with it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just done.
Thank you, Mr. Shook. Does anybody else have questions while we have Mr. Keene here?
I have a question.
Madam? Okay, yes.
Yes, so now that we know the posture that we're in, hold on, let me take a speaker. Now that we know that the posture we're in, Mr. King, what is the timeline on when the NBA, I assume that what I heard from Emergency Preparedness and you is that the NBA is still making a decision. Is that correct or incorrect? Hello? Can anybody hear me?
Council President Moore, I'm here. Yes, I can hear you.
Did you hear my question?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, what was your question?
So my question is, I almost forgot it that quick, whether or not, has the NBA made a final decision, or are we waiting on that decision to be made?
I can't speak to what the certainty is of their decision at this moment today, Council President Moore. I'm not sure whether, from their standpoint, they have made a final decision or is still in deliberation.
And who are they deliberating with? Are they working with the Sports Council, the Convention and Visitors Bureau? What entity do you know that they have contacted related to their coming?
Well, Council President, I would be speculating if I offered up my thoughts on that, because I don't know for certainty of which exact venues and entities they have had conversations with. As stated, I know that they have not spoken to me or any of the folks on my team at the City of Atlanta.
So are you saying that the administration is only aware of it, like I am and other members, through the media?
Yes. Other than any engagement we have started to have since we learned about it, similarly.
Okay. And do you have any sense? So let me ask this one more question just to make sure. So are you now in discussions with the NBA, or is the NBA in contact with the city?
They have not contacted me. I'll let, if Deputy Chief Shearbaum's still on, I'll let him speak specifically to who APD has started to work with, as well as I'll let Felipe speak to the specific entities that he's been working with as they, again, try to understand and then prepare for, because I don't want to mistake.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from them in their response to understand what is going to be the deadline by which they would know that this is happening or not.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Madam President. This is Deputy Chief Shearbaum with APD. I do have our Deputy Chief of Contingency Operations with me, who has been involved in initial planning. He is going to answer questions any more that there may be.
Okay.
Council President, this is Michael O'Connor. I'm the Deputy Chief for Contingency Ops. I have had a conversation with really one person. His name is Lance Johnson. He's the event lead for security purposes for the NBA. He's based in New York, I believe. And at the time that I spoke to him, they believed that they would have a decision by close of business on Tuesday whether or not the event was going to be coming to Atlanta. But at this time, he has still not gotten back to me, so I'm not aware whether they have made a finalized decision or not. I did ask that he reach out to us as early as possible, since it's such a compressed time scale to plan for the event.
Are other cities under consideration that you know of, that they're making that decision, or are they just deciding whether Atlanta is the location?
Yeah, so where they stood was they were trying to finalize hotels, and State Farm had to be on board with hosting the event. So they were working through Team Hotels and State Farm. I know they had a meeting with State Farm yesterday, but the results of that meeting I'm not aware of.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I can ask, because you all seem to not have as much information as we would probably like to have as the city. Thank you. Unless someone from Homeland Security had anything to add.
Madam President, that's everything that Chief O'Connor stated is correct. That's where we are in the standby mode right now.
Well, I would certainly hope Mr. King and whomever, the council, who would certainly like to know as soon as you know as well. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council President. All right. Anybody else have questions or comments on this issue?
Shook.
Mr. Shook. We're back to you.
Well, so the police official just said he hopes to have an answer from the NBA by, I think it was Tuesday. But an answer, implies a conversation. They're not going to put on an all-star game in a city that hasn't asked for it and doesn't want it. So let me go back to the administration. That seems to say, we know nothing about any of this, and give you one last chance to tell us what you know about this.
Councilmember Shook, this is John Keene, CEO. I assume that question is directed towards me, and my answer doesn't change. The answer is still the same, which is, yeah, go ahead.
No, that's fine. You didn't give an answer. I'll tell you, I'm coming off the administration where in a conversation like this, the mayor would be on the call. Okay? So, I'm sorry. I am totally dissatisfied with this, but thank you.
All right. Does anybody else have questions about this topic? I'm going to say something positive about the NBA. Unfortunately, the Krispy Kreme on Ponce de Leon burned down last night, but Shaquille O'Neal promises to rebuild it. So, going to end the discussion with that. I do believe that we at least did have Commissioner Norman on the line. I don't know if he has stayed on through all of this, but if Commissioner Norman is here and has any additional information about why we believe we've had such high COVID rates in public works, that would be great if you could let us know your thoughts on that, if you're still with us.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon, members of the Finance Executive Committee. And so I'm sorry, I actually was on the call, but I had stepped away on another line. I believe you guys had this discussion earlier. If I'm correct, it sounds like there was a question regarding the rate of positive COVID-19 results within the Public Works Department. Is that correct?
I can't remember whose question it was, but I think there was a discussion yesterday in utilities about high COVID rates within public works. That is one of the reasons why we're having some service issues, and there was questions about if we had any insight into why that was.
Okay. So, at the outset, I'd like to share that the city continues to provide appropriate PPE, including masks for staff to wear during the performance of the job duty. As you're all aware, for the Department of Public Works, as well as some of our other departments, we do still have a large contingent of mission critical employees who are reporting to work on a daily basis. While the city has continued to provide free testing for all mission critical employees, we have kind of tracked along, I think, with those folks who are outside of the city, that the trend along with the population is that in addition to appropriate PPE, our mission critical employees are not immune to exposure outside of the workplace. We have seen fluctuations, much as we have across the nation, with people letting their guards down from anecdotal information that's been shared outside of the workplace. We also have not been immune to folks' activities during special events outside of work as well as holidays. And so you continue to see fluctuations along with the rest of the population during those times. We currently are, as I believe you're aware, involved in providing access to COVID-19 vaccine for city employees. The last update I received, we are still in Tier 1A, where our emergency responders within public safety are in the process of receiving those priority doses. When we reach Tier 1B, that is when those mission critical folks, our critical infrastructure workers, such as those service in public works, will be eligible to receive those vaccination shots. And so we look forward to the supply being made available so we can have that extra level of protection. In addition to that, we do continue to focus at the department level to provide continuing ongoing support for employees to understand, the effects of any away from job activities, to focus on making sure that facilities are appropriately sanitized, as well as those vehicles that have to be, shared by multiple occupants. And so all of those efforts continue, but unfortunately, folks are not immune outside of the bubble of the city. And it tends to be trending along, I think, with some of those other metrics that we see overall statewide as well as citywide. But we continue to monitor that to the best of our ability. But I'm obviously open to respond to any specific questions.
Madam
Mr.
Chair, it was so muffled that I think I got part of it. This is Councilmember Dickens. So any follow-up questions, I'll ask Mr. Norman to figure out the phone situation and hold it steady or something to that effect. I didn't want to interrupt him as he was talking, but I don't know about you, but it was spotty, even muffled.
Yeah, we did not have great audio in that. Does anybody, and Mr. Norman, if you could just, and I got kicked off the phone while you were talking, but does it, in summation, do you think that people our public works employees are getting this at work, or do you think they're getting it outside of work and then possibly bringing it into the workplace?
Can you hear me better now?
That's better. Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I've repositioned the telephone. So that's a really hard determination to make. What I will share with you, as part of the ongoing testing that the city has afforded to the employee populace, we have seen limited, very minimal results for those individuals who were testing positive, who have afforded themselves to go through that reoccurring process. Once again, anecdotally, I know that employees have shared, as they have not only in public works, but within other departments, that much like the larger populace, clearly there are coworkers that they have that once again, may act differently outside of the workplace than they may inside of the workplace. And so once again, that is a hard determination to make whether such point may occur, but it is not because folks are not appropriately screened, and it's not because PPE is not being provided. But nonetheless, all of the precautions relative to sensitization, as well as making sure that folks are provided that appropriate protection, do continue to be in place.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Norman about this situation? I think we all just want to make sure that our employees are safe in the workplace. Anybody else?
And I think it's also helpful to note in those scenarios where there have been situations where individuals, you've had more than one individual test positive, those have resulted on occasion in, limiting access to or closing facilities for a deep sanitization process, as well as making sure that individuals who may have been directly exposed to anyone who tests positive have the ability to be quarantined as well. And so those things continue to occur. And once again, we are hopeful as we get to the Tier 1B eligibility that we will be able to add that extra layer of confidence with having folks have access directly to vaccination.
All right, thank you. And we are going to get you a new headset or something because it's still very difficult to hear you. But thank you for being with us today. Anybody else have anything else for the good of the order? If not, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn, and thank you for being here today. All right, we'll see you in 2 weeks.